Dear students, welcome to this module on methods of guest settlement. Over the last decade, the forms of payment accepted in hotels have changed quite dramatically, and most hotels still accept a variety of methods of payment for settlement, mainly to provide service to the clients either as cash or credit settlements. As the objectives of this module, after going through this module, you will be able to compile the different methods of guest settlement, understand the different records to be maintained for the guests, and also to differentiate the guest settlement methods and their procedure adopted. The cash floats, every hotel will need a store or float of the money to enable it to provide service to the customer, to give change for the bills, to allow the bars and other sales areas to operate, and to carry out foreign exchange transactions within the policy limits of the hotel. The size of floats denote the number of floats in a hotel that will vary accordingly to the number of sales outlets. A very small hotel may have just one float, whilst a large hotel with many restaurants may have two or more separate floats, one for each sales point. The amount of money needed in the float will be a reflection of two things. Firstly, the process changed in the department. Firstly, the prices changed in the department, and secondly, the number of transactions that has happened, the greater the size of the float. The composition of floats denote to the individual float that is made up of agreed amounts in a predetermined way. This composition will again reflect the tariff of the departments concerned. The main cash float of a large hotel will not have a great need for low value coins. For most items will come to round figures. The security aspects of the cash float are signed for as they are issued and signed back in against at the end of the day. If there is a handover from the one shift to another, then the total amount in the cash drawer is counted and agreed, and the float is passed on to the incoming cashier in the next shift. The cost of money aims in the hotel should be kept that the lowest number of floats and the amount of money in them to the lowest level possible, while still allowing the business to run smoothly. The first reason for this is the risk of theft or robbery always. The large amount of money will be more attractive to the theft in the event of a robbery, or a small float will minimum the losses. Now, when we look into detail the methods of settlement during guest, upon departure, that is during checkout of the guest, the hotel property will take care of accounts in different ways of settlements. There are different ways such as settlements by cash or settlement by credit. Now we will look into details on settlements by cash. There are various methods of settlement by cash, including cash as local currency, cash as foreign currency, checks, foreign checks, travelers checks, foreign checks, debit cards and credit cards. In dealing with each of these methods of payment, the hoteliers must assess the impact of three major factors, namely the liquidity, security and the worth of these transactions. When we look into liquidity, if a bill is paid in cash, the hotel can immediately use the money for other purposes for which the expenditure has to be met, to purchase goods for example, or bank the money or earn interest on it, so on. And when we look into the security aspect of such transactions, there are two sides of security. The first is the likelihood of forgery or fraud by each of the payments that is happening inside the hotel. The second is subsequent risk of theft done in the hotel has money. Talking about the worth. Finally, there is the total amount of money the hotel eventually receives in payment. This will not be the same in every case. Handling charges, commissions and delays in payment all cost for hotel money. Cash was traditionally the most popular method of paying bills at the hotel and other business transactions, but as prices have risen and other methods become so readily available, it is used much less in hotels and other such transactions where bills for few days stay can often amount to hundreds of rupees. And using foreign currencies is also another method of cash settlement. tourists and overseas guests may wish to settle their bills in their own currency. A list of currencies accepted by the hotel and the exchange rates on the particular day must be kept on the cashier department. The currencies which are subject to severe exchanges with rate fluctuations are not accepted usually. While handling with checks as cash settlements, for a while, payment by check was one of the most common methods used earlier and reflected the decline of cash as a method of payment in recent years. This has been aided by the check guarantee card. Check guarantee cards guarantees payment that is provided, and only one check is used per transaction, and it is signed in the presence of the cashier. The bank code on the check and the guarantee card agree. The card number is written on the reverse side of the check. The card has not expired at all. And the code number denotes the bank sorting code number must agree with the code of the issuing check. The card number is written on the reverse of the check by accepting the cashier. And the expiry date and the card will never have a expiry date and is valid, it is out of date. The signature must be checked against the signature written on the back of the check. And when accepting the check, the other important thing that the cashier should check is the number of points. One of the most important is the date in which the transaction is done and completed. The blank checks are usually given and held by some hotels so that the customer could fill the details of their own bank account number while paying the bill. And crossing the check is also another important thing that should be noted. The two most important things that are followed here is the account payee written. This means that the check can only be paid into the account of the person nominated, not to exceed with a number mentioned on the check. This crossing establishes a maximum value to the check and guards against the fraudulent practices that may happen during transactions. Next, talking about the traveler's check. These traveler's checks are also issued in fixed denominations by major banks and travel agents, and now the building societies throughout the world. The customer buys before leaving his home country in their own currency or in the currency of the country being visited and converts his as a traveler's check and has it transacted whenever he needs to use for different transactions. The foreign currencies, the foreign checks. Some hotels accept payment by foreign checks too, especially those drawn on banks in Europe which are written sterling. Those hotels which do accept foreign personal checks often have the rule that they must be approved by the senior staffs unless the client is a regular one for whom there is an established policy. Using debit cards is an important way of transactions that happens nowadays. Debit cards such as the Switch and the Delta are now a common alternative to checks. The outstanding sum is taken directly from the client's account in the same way that the check payment was done earlier. This payment would be transferred through the electronic point of sale system and no checks are necessary. And also, in place of debit cards, we also have the bank credit cards. The cards are issued by banks to its customers with varied credit limits. The customers use the card to purchase goods or avail services by signing a sales voucher for the total amount of the bill that has happened. The card holder is entitled to use the card for the services at the hotels below the available credit limit for the card. The foreign exchanges. The large hotels with high proportion of overseas visitors will make a contribution to their annual profit by offering foreign exchange facilities to their guests. The service is offered on a one-way basis only. The hotel may sell sterling for a foreign currency, and if a guest wishes to buy foreign currency, they have to use a bank. There is no legislation about exchange rates, so the hotel is free to offer whatever price it wishes, and hotels which operate a computerized system frequently incorporate the updated exchange rates within the front office program. This facilitates the more complex transaction, such a part payment of account in terms of foreign currency, and lessens the likelihood of errors occurring. When we look into petty cash transactions such as taxi fares, laundry, dry cleaning, and some other small items which are often paid by the cashier's department from a separate petty cash float, this float is always reimbursed daily by the hotel's income and individuals' petty cash vouchers and are allowed against the day's takings. And this is usually managed by the petty cashier at the front desk. When we look into other terms like visitors paid out, which we commonly call as VPO, this is a payment that is made on behalf of the guest and is usually done by prior arrangements, which ensures that the client has in fact ordered the payment to be made. For example, guest may authorize the cashier to pay out a sum of money for an airline ticket that is being delivered to the hotel. So in such cases, hotel pays out the money from the VPO and gets it settled from the guest account later. So this is called as visitors paid out. Now, when we talk about banking, all cash forms of settlements should be paid into banking each day so that the hotel receives full benefit from its income as earnings as quickly as possible. The risk of theft is also lessened. Departments will pay into the cashier's office or to a general cashier who is in charge of the hotel. The paying in of each department will be summarized on an internal paying in slip which can be checked for control purposes. These paying in slips are split into two sections detailing UK and foreign takings, department takings, and then consolidated for paying into the banks again. So these payments will be made to the bank every day so that the income earned goes into the bank at the end of each day. Now when we talk about the receipts, guests who pay by cash or check upon departure will be given a receipt by the hotel. The system in use will depend upon the accounting method of the hotel. The manual system of billing will either use a separate receipt book or a paid rubber stamp. A receipt book is preferable always, for the hotel can be kept a tight check on the number of receipts issued and the amount for each transactions that happen in the hotel. The receipts from the other departments can also be tracked with the other receipt books. The cashier is usually responsible for accepting and recording money taken from other sale points and may also be responsible for reading and checking the bills. A receipt should be issued and given in the member of the staff, the money placed in the drawer or the cupboards, the details recorded according to the system in use in the hotel. Advance deposits and prepayments are also a way of settlement of guests. Advance deposits and prepayments are particularly important in resort hotels where guests may book a substantial length of time ahead. The system varies slightly from one hotel to another but usually involves the following tasks. A receipt is made out and sent to the client. The amount of the deposit is recorded in the diary for the equivalent record. The deposit is recorded in the advance deposit ledger. On arrival or departure, the guest account is credited with this particular deposit. Pre-authorization also takes place. This pre-authorization means that the method allows the guest credit that is very simple both for the hotel and for the customer. The guest's credit card is swiped on the arrival and the guest's credit card is swiped on the arrival, and the credit card company reserves the predetermined amount as credit limit for that particular transactions. So the hotel is assured that it will get its money somehow. There are chances of refunds sometimes. Occasionally, it may be necessary to refund money to the guest, usually because they have paid very much in advance and have to leave earlier than they planned. The bill which will carry a credit balance, and the usual way of dealing with this is to obtain a VPO, which is visitors paid out, for the amount of refund and the post of VPO to the guest account, thus reducing the bill to zero. The guest may be given the cash and asked to sign the voucher, which can then be treated in the usual way as it happens. Rapid speedy checkout. Many hotels have introduced these facilities as an extra service for those clients who want to make a quick gateway on this departure, especially at checkout. It is essential to ensure that client is made aware of the facility, and some hotels usually follow the notification of service in the room, while others advise guests at the check-in point. The client may be invited to fill out a card giving permission for the hotel to charge the entire account to the guest's credit card. The card has space for the guest's signature, name, room number and credit card number, or alternatively, the cashier may take an imprint of an acceptable credit card. When the client leaves, that is during departure, the process of checkout, they need only to deposit the card in a special box or in the key drop, and the account is finalized even at their absence. The same facility can be extended to allow the guests to check out by swiping their own card once they have viewed and agreed the bill. As above, the hotel would undertake to send a copy of the bill to the client after departure. So far, what we have seen is the settlement by cash, which usually happens to the guest who books by himself, who we call as free independent travelers, which is FITs. Such kinds of guests who book and travel independently use such settlements, usually by settlements or by cash. So when we look into the credit transactions that happen, it is not by the free independent travelers, it is usually by groups. And now we will look into the different credit settlements. So during these credit settlements, there are three different types of settlements. The hotel does not receive immediate payment on the day of departure, that is during checkout, but the accounts are settled later. The three types of accounts are settlements by charge cards, settlements by corporate accounts, or sometimes the travel agent vouchers. Settlement by travel agent voucher denotes to the group bookings which are usually done by the travel agent. Now we will look into the settlement by charge cards. Charge cards are credit cards which are issued by private credit card organizations. When a guest settles their accounts with this charge card, the hotel does not receive payment on the same day. Instead, at the end of each shift, the cashier will transfer all the bills settled by the charge card to the accounts department for them to follow up. This will be done at the back of the house operations at the accounts section. At the end of the week or month, the accounts department will send out statements of total amount charged to the private credit card organizations together with the copies of all the imprints that is signed by the customer. On receiving this statement and imprints, the credit card company will settle the amounts to the hotel less its commission. So this somehow takes a week or a month's time for the hotels to get the account settled. In the case of corporate accounts and travel agent vouchers, the bills will have to be transferred to the accounts department. The accounts departments will then mail the account and invoice to the company or in the agents, and the later receive a check for the settlement. Once again, the travel agencies will send its settlements less their commission, which is agreed for a particular period of time. So far we have seen the methods of settlement of guests either by cash or credit. Now we will look into see the other two types of accounts. One is the master accounts and the other one is incidental accounts. The master accounts are the accounts that are usually settled by guests during the checkout process. The incidental accounts are those which are paid by the travel agents or by the corporates upon their arrival of the guest at the corporate. So these types of accounts are those that has to be segregated much by the employees during the handling of the guest. So these master accounts are usually settled by the guest in the checkout process of the hotel, and sometimes what happens is in the incidental accounts the company agrees upon during the agreement that certain expenses are to be met by the guest, and these will be taken as master accounts, and those that has to be settled by the company or by the travel agent will be segregated into the incidental accounts. So the incidental accounts will be those that has to be settled from the accounts department. The accounts department will track back to the corporate company or to the travel agent for them to settle less their commission. So, the front office employees should understand the concept of settlement for master accounts and the concept of settlement for incidental accounts too. So, for settlement of incidental accounts, it is enough that the customer signs for the incidental expenses that has happened, and that will be tracked back by the company or the travel agent later for settlement from the back house operations. So, these are the different types of settlements that may happen during the checkout process. As a conclusion to this module, it is important that all the employees of the hotels handle the accounting process very much precise and is within the reach of the guests throughout their stay, and also later for the employees for the accounting purposes that must happen in a hotel. Whether the employees are working behind the front desk, at the housekeeping department, or in the restaurant or cafe, or any of the back house operations, each employee should treat every hotel guest with the kind of hospitality, and remember the rule that the customer is the king for any service industry and especially the hotel business. And therefore, maintaining accurate accounting procedures will enhance the guest services and help to maintain the brand name of the hotel property. Hope you learned this module. Thank you.